the Dean of the Big Ten coaches. Soon to kick off his 19th year in charge of the Iowa Hawkeyes, he is Kirk Ferentz. And Kirk, I know you don't care too much about recruiting services, star rankings, etc. But that being said, A.J. Epenesa is across the board a 5-star recruit. Why do you think he got those high marks?
Well, you know, he's the kind of player my sister could tell you is pretty good. It's pretty obvious. He's just a really good football player, outstanding in track, good basketball player. He's just a really talented guy athletically. But the thing I really appreciate about him more than anything else is just kind of person he is. He's just a tremendous young man. They've got a real strong family. The Epenesa family is a strong family. And, you know, when he committed to us a year ago, his sister actually drove here from Purdue. She's a volleyball player, former volleyball player there. Drove up here so they could all be in the office together to let me know. And, you know, those kinds of things don't happen much more in this day and age.
What else stood out to you about the recruitment of A.J.?
Well, he was just so consistent all the way through. You know, 2 years ago he's up here at a basketball game, and his interest in our program was strong right from the start. I think he had great family support in that regard. But, you know, he was the same guy all the way through it. Certainly he's been ranked high by a lot of the recruiting services and whatnot, and gone to all-star games. But he's never really changed. He's, I think, stayed focused on what he's doing at his high school. He's worried about playing well on his high school football team. Now it's his basketball team, and he'll be the same way in track. And, you know, he'll be here soon enough, so we're just really thrilled that he's joined our class.
We talk an awful lot about how success in the fall for your football team doesn't necessarily mean success a few months later on signing day. Sometimes it means success the following year. How much did your 12-0 regular season 2 years ago affect this year's class?
I think it's probably major because recruiting, as you all know, is the process has moved up. You know, it used to start, you know, during the players' prospect senior year, or even after. I'm going back to the 80s. You know, really now it starts really early. So, you know, I think every step along the way is important, certainly. And if you do have a good year during a prospect's junior year, that's certainly beneficial. But it can go the other way, too. If you have some hardship on the field, I think sometimes prospects see some opportunity as long as the program overall is strong.
You have a Texas quarterback in Peyton Mansell. What should we know about him?
Well, you know, he's a guy that really jumped out at us early. He's a good football player, good on film again, but I'll go back to the thing we're really thrilled about, the intangibles, the things you find just from visiting with he and his family. He's a tremendous young man, strong leader, very humble. And, you know, same thing. He stayed consistent all the way through this process. Greg Davis retired back in early January, and Greg was the primary recruiter on Peyton. So, you know, needless to say, there's a little concern there. But I think Peyton not only was buying into Greg and what Greg sold in recruiting through the process, but also the bigger picture, our program, our university. And he just felt like he was a great fit. So, again, I really appreciate the consistency he showed throughout the entire process.
It's a pretty balanced group of players here. What position would you say is the strength in this class?
You know, I don't know about strength, but we really were trying to address the perimeter of our football team. I felt like it was really important for us. We just graduated some outstanding senior defensive backs with Desmond King, Greg Mabin, and Anthony Gear back there. So we really had to fortify our secondary. I think we did a good job of that. The receiver core is something we're trying to fortify. I think we've done that as well. Happy with the 2 running backs that we got. Peyton we just talked about. So I think we did a good job there. And then, you know, we didn't go as heavy maybe on the interior, but I feel good about the prospects that we were able to sign.
You mentioned the running backs, Keyshawn Braun, Ivory Kelly-Martin. How do you describe what those two guys bring?
Well, they're a little bit different. Keyshawn's a little bit more of a power guy, more of a downhill guy. Ivory's pretty elusive and slick, but we think they're both good in their own rights. And you know, we played with 2 guys that were very different last year with LaShawn Daniels, Akram Wadley. Both were very successful. So, you know, we're not locked into one particular type of back necessarily. And sometimes it's good to have guys that complement each other.
You mentioned earlier how different recruiting has become in your time as an assistant coach. How is it different from your first year? When you first took over Iowa, how is signing day specifically different then versus now?
You know, there's just a lot more hype right now than there was 18 years ago or 19 years ago. And I guess my first Kodak moment from, you know, in January '99, actually. We were in a meeting, we were closing the meeting up, and one of the coaches brought up a couple of juniors that had been offered. And that was horrifying to me because I'd been out of major college football for 9 years. In the 80s, you know, you didn't really offer prospects until they came to campus, and that never happened until December, but more typically January after their senior years. So, you know, fast forward 9 years, this is 99. One of the guys mentioned an offer to an underclassman. That kind of, you know, took me aback a little bit. And then that's just commonplace now. You know, it's just so common. So, but the thing that hasn't changed is that, you know, guys, a lot of guys are getting offers early, the obvious players, the obvious high-level guys. But there's still an awful lot of players that develop during the course of their high school careers that end up in their senior years or at the end of their senior years being really legitimate players. I think about the Falcons game against the Packers a couple weeks ago. We had 4 guys, actually 5 guys playing in that game. 3 of those guys were guys we offered in January. Guys like Jonathan Bobineau, Micah Hyde, Mike Daniels, that are playing at the highest level in the highest league. Yeah, so that hasn't changed. You know, players develop at different rates, and you know, I think you just have to be patient sometimes and really be as thorough as you possibly can.
Plus, back when you started, you didn't have to do an interview with me and Jerry and Howard and Allen, so clearly it's better now, right?
This is certainly a bonus of progress, you know. It's just, it's one of the good things. But to that point, you know, the Big Ten Network, I can't help but bring that up. You know, when this whole thing got started, when Jim Delaney had the vision, you know, he was definitely the enemy of the people. Nobody, you know, saw this thing being a legitimate thing. And, you know, now everybody's trying to copy the Big Ten. So you got to give Jim Delaney credit on that and all the people that supported the initiative.
Kirk Ferentz, head coach of the Iowa Hawkeyes. Congratulations on your class. Thanks for giving us a few minutes.
Thanks very much, guys.